Hi guys, this is Jeff at Slavens Racing. This video is about how to change fork seals in the WP AER Fork, AER Fork. It comes on the XC, XCF, SX, SXF, and then the Husky TX, TC, and FX and FC models. So this is an AER Fork, has no spring in it. Some guys are scared of that because, you know, it's uncharted territory for them, but this is one of the easiest forks there is to work on. So the only special tool you need is a 50mm fork cap wrench. This is a factory one, but we've got Motion Pro ones and System Tech Racing ones that are all in I'm going to say around $16 to $18 range, something like that, on our website, slavensracing.com. So the first thing you got to do is put them in soft jaws. If you don't have soft jaws, you can loosen this fork cap while the forks are still on the bike. So loosen the triple clamp bolts on the top here so that it's not squeezing the outer fork tube, because that does bind up the threads. And then loosen the cap, just, you know, a quarter turn, and then take the forks off the bike. Or if, you know, some guys don't have vices, that's a method for if you don't. If you do have a vise, but you don't have soft jaws, you could put some blocks of wood in here and then put the fork in at like a 45-degree angle. Otherwise, it's going to try to roll out. But they shouldn't be on there very tight. And that's how tight this one was. So I'm just loosening it up because I'm going to go to the other end, work on it. So on this end, you always want to clamp across here. This is called the dropout, this piece. This is where the axle goes through. So if you put it in there, sorry about that, all that noise. If you put it in there, this, I've got these trays on here for working on suspension. So that fork cap, I forgot to mention, it looks different than what's on your bike. This is what the stock one looks like. That is an MX Tech TAC-R cap, but this is what the stock one looks like, and you still use the same wrench for it. I highly recommend that you do not use crescent wrench or channel locks or anything. These are pretty fragile and you can really nerf them up real quickly. So from here, I'm just going to take a flat blade screwdriver and pop out this rubber plug. In order to take the cartridge out, you have to remove this bolt here. That's a 19mm. There's two different types of sockets. There's a 12-point, because it has 12 points, or a 6-point. The 6-point has a lot better contact and is much less likely to round the bolt that you're trying to remove. This is aluminum, so it means it's soft. Sometimes they're kind of stuck in there, and if you're using a 12-point, you're increasing your probability of rounding it off, and if you do that, you've got a big mess on your hands that I'm not going to help you with on this video. But you can tell by the sound of that thing was in there pretty tight. Okay, so that's all I wanted to do right now with soft jaws was loosen up both ends. Now I'm going to take the forks out of the vise. After you've loosened both ends, now it's time to drain the fluid out. So I'm just going to unscrew the cap. Pour out the fluid. Now I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to finish taking out the bolt on the bottom. Look at the video here, make sure you can see what I'm doing here. Now let's turn it this way. hard to tell when you're at the end of this. So I'm going to see if the cartridge pulls out, and it does. Okay, now I've got the cartridge assembly out. Sorry guys, I'm doing this by myself, so yeah, it's a little bit tricky. It's best if you take off this fork guard, but I didn't. It's just 3 bolts. I should have taken it off, but I didn't. And then I've got a screwdriver here that I've ground on the end to make it really sharp. But you can do it with a regular one as well. And I got to pop out this dust seal. I removed the fork guard because it was in the way. And then I slid the dust seal all the way up to here. Now inside of here is a circlip, and you can just use a small screwdriver like this to get it out. There are special tools, but they're not really needed. And you know, like with all my videos, I try to make it to where you guys at home don't have to go out and buy a bunch of special tools that you're going to use once or twice in your lifetime. You know, if you're a professional mechanic, then you should have them. And right now, so the circlip, one side is angled in a direction that makes it hard to catch with the screwdriver. The other side has got kind of a hook on it. I'll show it to you when I get it out. But it just pops right out. So this is the end that you're wanting to catch right here. This one is a little bit harder to catch. You can do it on either one. So from there, you should actually heat this area of, this is where the seal is sitting. You should heat this with a torch. I'm not going to do that for this video because I'm sure you can figure that out. Just a regular butane torch is fine, or an acetylene if you have one. And the reason it's good to heat that up is so the seal will come out easier, and you're less likely to do damage to the bushing. And because the bushing might be in good condition, you could reuse it. So from there, you use this kind of like a driver. Pop it out of there. Now we've got the inner tube bushing, the outer tube bushing. There's a little washer here that helps. The seal pushes against it instead of against the bushing. And then you've got the seal. This rotates and it's got a split end on it. So it's a DU bush is what these are called. So just take a screwdriver in there and pry it open, take it off. This one should slide right off. At this time you can inspect it, see if you did any damage to it when you were removing it. And it did not. Now this, when you pound them apart like that, this one gets a little damaged, so it gets cupped shape. Instead of being flat like it should be, it's now got a cup to it. And we sell these if you want to replace it, or you can just set it on a flat surface. Tap around here, it's reasonably soft, and you can make it flat again. You don't really have to buy these every time, although if you want, we do have them. And then you pull off the seal. And I'm going to pull off the wiper and the circlip. From there, I'm going to clean it up so I can inspect it. And what I'm looking for here is like a nick or a scratch that might have damaged the seal. I think this one was actually taken out from some mud. But I'm going to use some of the Scotch-Brite and I'm going to rub on it. The Scotch-Brite does not damage the chrome, but if there's a scratch or a nick in there, you can feel it. It will catch on there. You can get Scotch-Brite at a hardware store or Home Depot. It's always kind of good just to go over it anyhow, to get off any kind of a layer of crud that might be on there. So I didn't feel anything. I don't see anything wrong with this, so I'm going to just put a new seal on it. Clean it one more time, get that possible grit off of there from that Scotch-Brite. Let's see here. Yeah. So from here you need a seal bullet. I mean, you can put a plastic bag over the end or something like that because there's a sharp edge here and you will damage the seal sliding it on if you don't use a seal bullet or a plastic bag. I'm not a big fan of the plastic bag things, but you can, this is a factory one, but you can buy, we've got them in stock, a much less expensive version. I think they're about $7, $6, something like that. This just slides over and covers those sharp areas, and then the new seal can slide right over that. With all the seals that we sell, we include a little complimentary pack of seal grease, and we only sell SKFs. There's a lot cheaper seals out there. They're all junk. I've tested every single one of them. I wouldn't even think about installing them. The SKFs are by far top of the line. And there's a couple different models. You want the green ones. We've got a full selection of these on our site for a lot of different brands of bikes. So you definitely want to put a layer of grease in there first. This is the same type of grease that comes with our seals when you buy them at slavensracing.com. And just put in there, a layer of it. There's no certain amount because if you put in too much, it's just going to get wiped off when you slide it over the seal bullet. So the dust seal goes on first. It's got a spring on it here. The spring goes towards the bottom of the fork, towards the axle dropout. Slide that on first and just slide it down and get it out of your way. Then as the circlip goes on next, just clean and inspect everything as you're putting it on. Some of you guys that live in the real wet climates here in the U.S., like Northwest or back east, or guys live in, Central America, wherever, sometimes these circlips are really rusted. Doesn't mean that they're not usable. They are, but you'd have to put some work in it to clean them up, sand them. We do have these as well on our site. Next is the oil seal. When you slide it over this part, it's kind of rough here and it pushes kind of hard, but once you get up into here, the slick part of the tubing, then it just goes right on down. Get that out of your way. Next thing is the washer, and I fixed this one. So what works best for me are like a dead blow hammer, a compost hammer, and I use the opposite end of the vise. Almost all vices have an anvil type area there. It's flat. You can set it on there and hit it with one of those hammers. That dead blow hammer is at work, so I just got out this big old thing, wooden hammer. Worked fine. You can do it with whatever you have. Next is the bushing, the outer tube bushing. So I'm going to clean it up, inspect it just a little bit. Now it feels just a little bit gritty, and that tells me my guess was correct, that it's mud that's what knocked out the seal, because the mud got past the seal. So I'm going to take the Scotch-Brite and I'm just going to lightly go around on the inside of this bushing. Now guys quite often inspect the wrong side. This part means almost nothing. You're inspecting the Teflon coating on the inside, and it just needs to be fairly smooth to the touch and make sure it's all on there. Quite often we'll start peeling up on the edges. This one's in good shape. I'm going to take the seal bullet off. Now this goes on. Do the same thing here, inspect the inner tube bushing. move the camera here, so let me check and see if you guys can see. Yep, I think you can. So it feels good. It's not gritty feeling. This one is at the bottom of where the oil is held, so it's always going to collect way more junk in it than one up at the very top. And it feels good. On the inside, you know, it looks a little odd. You might think it needs replaced, but it does not. But I do recommend that if you order seals, you should order bushings. You should have them on hand, because once you're in there, if you find a problem, well, if you find a bad bushing, well, then you got to call us up again and get them on the way. So now you've really delayed your project. And at that point, you might even kind of forget how it goes back together. So from here, I'm just going to wipe out. Let me check this camera up. I'm going to wipe out the inside of this. And I'm going to look down through here. Sight down through there, and it should look nice and shiny. If it doesn't, get out some spray cleaner, like a contact cleaner, and clean it out. So from here, it's ready to go back together. And let me see where my seal driver is here. So we sell seal drivers. This is a really old one. We don't have these anymore, but we do have a fancier version. I don't remember what they cost. I'm going to say 30 bucks or something. What I do is I tap on that washer first to make sure that the bushing is really in position correctly. Because if it's a little bit cockeyed and then you go to drive in the seal, the problem gets compounded. So you can tell by that sound that it's in all the way. I'm going to slide the seal down. I'm going to drive it in. You can tell by the sound again, the seal is bottomed. You don't need to just beat the hell out of it. Now it's time to put the circlip back in. For that, you're going to need your screwdriver. And you're just going to need to pop it in until you hear it. I heard it snap in there. Then what I do is I push on one end and see if I can rotate it around. That tells me it's in the groove. On this end, you can use the seal driver again to drive it in. Quite often you can put them in by hand, but I'm going to use the seal driver here. That's all there is to it. You got to be careful though. If you use the seal driver, you might want to take and pop this spring off of here first and push it up here. Then drive in the seal. Then put the spring back on. I actually damaged the spring just a little bit, but not a big deal. Okay, seal's in. Yeah, let me adjust this a little bit for you. Sorry guys, like I said, I'm doing this by myself, doing the best I can here just to help you out. This is my own bike. Just wanted to knock out a seal. Thought doing this video would be helpful to some of you guys to have the same model fork on your bike. So at this point, I'm going to collapse the fork all the way. Down like that. I'll wipe off some of this oil that's on here. I think I'll just remove this guard as well. Now it's time to put the cartridge back in. So this cartridge was rebuilt recently, so I'm not going to do that again. I'm just going to put it back in. I'm going to put it back up in here. I'm going to raise this up a little bit. Okay, I pushed it in until it actually pushed the bolt out the back here a little bit, so it should be fully bottomed. Now I'm going to tighten that bolt. Okay, cartridge is in, the bolt's tightened down. Now it's ready for fluid. So I've already measured out the oil quantity that I want. For this fork, it's 180 cc's of the factory calls for 4 weight, but WP is the only company that makes that. And it's very expensive, and it's kind of ridiculous. The difference between 4 and 5 weight is almost nothing. I don't know why they did that, but anyhow, this is 5 weight. I'm using the Maxima 85-150, which is a 5. And then you cannot use a vacuum device to pull out the excess oil like you do on an open chamber fork. You know, you don't use this type of a tool. You just measure it out and pour it in the outer chamber. So from here, I'm going to go down to the fork. And, you know, this wiggles around. That's totally normal. And you just carefully pour the oil in here. Let's see if I can get around here a little bit better. And I always like to let it run out until it starts dripping, and then I stop there. Use whatever method you want, as long as you do it the same way every time. And then from there you just pull the outer tube up to the fork cap, and then you tighten down the fork cap. All you got to do is get it to where the O-ring is engaged so it doesn't leak. Now you can put it back up here in the soft jaws. And tighten the cap. And this does not have to be really tight. You should not crank on it. It's an aluminum cap into an aluminum tube. So similar metals, if you really crank on it, you might never get it apart. So I just hit it just a little bit. Now it's ready to go back on the bike. That's really all there is to changing the seal on this. You would use a similar procedure if you just want to change the oil, only you wouldn't take the cartridge out. And the other side, you also remove the cartridge. It's a little bit different looking cartridge, but it's the same theory. Take the cap off, take the nut off the bottom, pull out the cartridge, bam, it's ready to take apart to change the seal. So the seal, I mean, trying to do a video and do this at the same time really slows down the project. I could have done this in about 5 minutes had I had not been taking a video, or making a video, excuse me. Now this one here, you can see this wear ring has got quite a bit of wear. It's not totally ready to replace yet, but you want to keep an eye on these. Don't let it get it down to where it's rubbing into the aluminum body. That's what it's there for, is to prevent that. And these are cheap. They're just in a little groove. You pop them out of there and slide them up and get them off. Other than that, you know, forks don't require that much maintenance. I don't ever change fork fluid. About every 40 hours, I take the forks apart, change the seals, change the fluid, completely clean the internals, and call it good. I mean, change the fluid if you want. That's just not my way of doing it. To me, it's a lot of hassle when I can go just a little bit farther and have a really nice rebuilt fork that feels a lot better. I'll post the parts at the bottom of this video, right below the video in the description area. I'll post links to the parts, and please join our Slavens Racing YouTube channel and join our email list so you can get our videos and other product information every week. And that's all for now.